And we are back. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. I'm one of your co-hosts, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart and co-host, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are you?
Doing great. It's a busy week for me because we got the NFL Combine coming up soon. Going to be in Indianapolis, but as always, juiced to be talking ball.
The freak out about Shedeur Sanders not throwing is overblown.
Oh, absolutely. I didn't think you were going to have a take on that. Yeah, I completely agree with this.
Yeah,
I think it's so stupid.
Why I have a take on it because let me just tell you this. Jaden Daniels didn't throw.
Most guys didn't throw. He doesn't need to throw.
He doesn't need to throw. Well, I'm going to leave my take about Shedeur Sanders alone. I'm not an NFL guy. I don't think that he's going to be ready year one. The places that he would have to go, he's not. I think the game that he played in the conference that he played, it's a much different beast. So compete for what exactly? What, like, I see that people are mad because he doesn't want to compete. Compete for what exactly? Well, he can't do anything but hurt his stock. He's not going to go to the combine and help his stock by throwing on air. I'm sorry, it's not going to work.
He's already established himself as, at the least, the second quarterback taken.
He's a top five pick.
I wouldn't say top five, but the team that's going to take it,
team that moves up and gets him. You watch.
I think at the very least he's a top 10 pick. I don't think it's as totally a foregone conclusion because of who's picking in the top 10 that they wouldn't rather have some of these defensive prospects. But to what you're saying, though, whoever picks him is going to be based on preference, scheme fit, situation. I don't think that he fits with every single team that's looking for a new quarterback. But the rest of the options, they suck. Jalen Milroe, Quinn Ewers, Jackson Dart, they're not good options. So that's who he would be effectively competing with. He's not competing with Cam Ward the way that people realize. They're evenly matched and they're meant for different situations.
I take Cam Ward over him.
I would too. I think Cam Ward is a much higher ceiling.
You know how I am about off-field antics when it comes to that position. Let's go through – you can go through 3 years. Like, I don't like Caleb Williams' antics. I don't. I don't like Shedeur Sanders going into press conferences and calling out teammates. I don't. I think that there's a massive difference. It leads into decision making at that position. Listen, you can show me quarterbacks that everybody thinks is highly talented. When you're going into the interview, so I say all that to say the interviews are a bigger deal for him than him throwing. You know the talent that you're getting there. How cocky or confident is he going to be in those interviews?
I'm pushing back on this one. It was one press conference that he had where he brought that up at the beginning of the season. No, it was
when they lost at Jackson State. He went up there and said, and I'm quoting pretty much. I'm somewhat paraphrasing, but he went up there and said it wasn't his fault. He literally said, "I did not lose this game."
He was a true freshman at the time. Blake, any person that you talk to, from what I have heard, out of any quarterback, even over the past few years, he is considered to have one of the best characters, one of the best leaders to be considered, and that's why he's being talked about as a top 10 pick. I don't think he's an antics guy. I don't think that he is at all.
1,000% is an antics.
Quinn Ewers is an antics guy. We know plenty about. I'm not going to elaborate on it, but he's, from what I've heard, isn't exactly very locked in. Actually, wait, we do have examples of it. I mean, you're getting pulled screenshots of him, where he was Snapchatting with and DMing with. You know what I'm talking about? That was stupid stuff, but there's other things that I'm not going to elaborate on.
He's not throwing it. All right, I'm just going to say this. We've had 3 drafts where quarterbacks have gone really high that have had off-the-field antics. None of them
doesn't have off-the-field antics. I don't like you for it's not.
Okay,
he doesn't.
Okay. Well, y'all were wrong on Anthony Richardson. Y'all are going to be wrong on Caleb Williams, and I'm telling you, you're going to be wrong on Shedeur Sanders.
He's going to be fine. He's going to be fine.
Okay. You go ahead. You watch. You watch. I will stand hands to Jesus when it comes to that one. All right. Speaking of Colorado, we got some Deion not recruiting talk to get to. People are going to hate me from Colorado or just Deion Sanders fans in general.
Mm-hmm.
Joe, before we get to a break, because I don't think we're going to spend too much time on this, do you want to get to the Deion or get to the break?
Let's get to it. Let's get to it after the break.
So we'll get to Deion not recruiting or at least not going in home. We'll talk DCs. Tom Allen, Matt Patricia, Jim Knowles on the top of the list, and then we'll talk Scott Frost. Not, I guess, technically year one expectations at UCF, but not really. I mean, he's been there before, but I guess we'll talk about first year expectations for Scott Frost as well. So let's get moving here. So, Joe, we were talking a little bit about Deion Sanders, but it doesn't really matter because we're a college football show. But there is something interesting that is out there. For a second straight year, the head coach, the father of Deion Sanders, Deion Sanders, for a second straight year, is not going in-home, on the road, in recruiting visits. Joe, I don't know how to feel with this. I'm just going to kick it off to you first. Your thoughts on Deion going to back-to-back years of not doing in-home visits when it comes to high school recruiting?
The quote that he had in the interview that he did was, I don't go to nobody's school or nobody's house. I'm not doing that. I'm too old to be going to somebody's school, somebody's house. All the kids that I'm recruiting, as a matter of fact, they're in the portal. They're grown men with kids. They don't need me to come around their crib and try to convince them to come play for me. Nah, that was what he said in regards to this. I think that the angle of the way that we look at this is, and it's something that's been talked about before, it keeps getting resurfaced every time that he does an interview because it's a very unique recruiting approach. The angle of him not doing in-home visits is it's not what the lead should be. The lead in this conversation is him being extremely portal dependent because he's right. He doesn't go after that many high school recruits. And if he's not going to go after high school recruits, he's not going to be taking in-home visits with these transfer portal guys. He's not going to be taking in-home visits with these guys that are juniors and seniors. If they want to come play for Colorado, they're going to come play for Colorado. He has had success in the transfer portal of attracting and bringing in quality guys in order for this team to take slow, progressive steps forward in the right direction. I think that, and we've spent time, we talked about Florida State planning on how we didn't think that the way that Mike Norvell was building his team was sustainable for long-term success because it wasn't. But I think in the Big 12, in a different conference, in a different setting, with some of the guys that he's brought in, having this transfer portal first approach is working for him. I think that he is a one-of-one coach that can actually pull something like this off. I don't think that Mike Norvell is the type of coach that could have pulled this off. So I think that when we have this discussion and as we elaborate on this, we need to remember that Deion Sanders is a different coach than most others.
Joe, Deion Sanders with the University of Colorado has a 5-year deal worth $30 million. 5 divided by 30 is 6. So he's making $6 million a year. Name a coach in the country that can make $6 million a year and not do in-home visits. Truth is, he is recruiting through the portal. You're right. His statement is factually correct. He may be one of one. It's laziness. It is laziness. When you get to a place where if I'm Florida State, if I'm one of these other teams that, let's say Colorado has a really good year in the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, and all these other places, okay, have different expectations of how you recruit. Now, you're right. He may be one of one, but hold on just a minute. Mike Norvell went through 2 years of going through the portal, and then the third year it fell on its face. Deion might not do that because of Caden coming in and being his quarterback. He had a Heisman Trophy winning utility player, if we want to call it like that, and he had a top 10, as you said, quarterback and his son there. It's not as if they didn't have talent. Here's the problem. Where do you want to get to? Because the reason I asked that is we talked about this last night. You have to have a foundation when some of these portal pieces don't hit. Is the expectation for him to win the Big 12? I'm assuming it is. Why did you fall short a year ago? Let me say this too. Not going in home may be fine, but you're not going to fix your offensive line issues through the portal. You have to recruit through high school. The defensive line, maybe you can do a little bit better there because there's more of a quantity of guys in the portal that you can hit on, but you cannot build the way that you need to build through the portal to sustain and to win championships consistently. Joe, I feel like a guy making $6 million, he may be one of one. Can anybody else in the country get away with this though? And if I'm an AD anywhere else in the country, if you come to my school and I want to hire you, are you going to go do in-home visits, or are you going to continue to do the same thing? I think two things can be true at once. You're right. Deion is a different beast of what he's doing. Joe, not going in-home and recruiting is why you're never going to have a great foundation at Colorado. You've seen where he can take it going through the portal. How does he look when he actually gets to work and builds that foundation? Here's what I would say. There's an old business adage. When you're selling, don't leave money on the table. If somebody tells you, hey, we want to come, but you're not doing in-home visits. You're not doing this. You're not doing X. You're not doing Y. You're not doing Z. I think he's leaving a lot on the table to really rebuild to the success of always he wants to already do. What you're telling me is that you're okay with where you're at. Joe, I'm sorry. He's got to go in-home visits. Colorado, for what it's worth, did not have the structure or the money or the foundation to pay him when he got paid. They didn't. Deion came out and said that they didn't. Colorado came out and said that they didn't. But they trusted in him. Joe, no other coach in the country can get away with this. And I understand that. But before Deion even came, and Deion fans are going to kill me in the comments on this, if you're a true Colorado fan, like real Colorado fan, yes, you're glad that you're not going 1-11 every year. I get it. But you could be much greater than what you are right now and potentially make a playoff.
You just said how Colorado didn't have the money to pay him. The way that this has offered a return is the fact that he is the most marketable coach and the most well-known coach to the casual viewer in the country.
Fair.
He's in every single commercial. He doesn't need to take in-home visits because Nick Saban and Deion Sanders are extremely different. And I'm not saying that Deion Sanders is a better head coach than Nick Saban. That's not what I'm trying to get at here. My point is that the attraction of coming to play for Colorado is being a part of the brand that he is representing. A cool, young, unique, different approach to playing college football. And the big part where I'm off on this, and I think that where the misconception is that they're not having success in high school recruiting. They finished 4th in the Big 12 on 247 Sports. They signed the most 4-star recruits out of any Big 12 teams. The only reason why they finished 4th is because they only had 14 commitments. So they're fine in high school recruiting. I think that is
their total number. They're not fine, but where are they?
Overall,
they're going to be in the 40s to 50s.
I think that they were, but no, 37. They finished 37.
50s.
But their ultimate goal is to win the Big 12 and go to the national championship. They're not trying. They shouldn't be swinging for the fences this upcoming year. The approach to be, we're winning a national title. It's getting to the next step, which is winning the conference, going to the playoff. And I would argue
that
you do that by bringing in 8 4-star kids, a recruiting class that this program typically doesn't have. I just believe, again, if there is a coach that can get away with the transfer portal first approach, it's going to be on Deion Sanders, specifically in a conference where, and you brought up the offensive line play. The offensive line stuff hasn't been good, but it's been improving. It's been getting better. In a conference where
they were 132nd in rushing, they were 133rd. I mean, I'm not trying to be
okay. But the improvement that they had was Shedeur Sanders was pressured less, and they had more opportunities for him to drop back. They weren't perfect. Jordan Seaton is a bright spot. They have other young guys in their offensive line that are bright spots. What I'm trying to get at, though, is that this conference, the Big 12, it lacks premier defensive line talent. They're not on the SEC.
Well, that would be my point. They were pressured less because they weren't facing teams like Washington and Oregon. The Pac-12 was a better conference than what the Big 12 is currently. Obviously, right. So, no, I don't think that they're getting better there. My point is, I actually agree with you on this. You hit the nail on the head here when you say how they've branded their recruiting process. Come be a part of the brand. Come make money. It's a flashy thing to do. What I'm saying is that's okay for 3 years. That's okay for a couple of years to do that, to build something. But to get, what is the next level that you got to get at? Now, think about this. You said they signed 14 players, did you not?
Yes.
That's 11 players on average when teams sign 25 plus kids that you're leaving on the table. How many of those 11 kids that you could have gone in home and worked them over? By the way, did he go in home with Travis Hunter?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
He did. He, at the very end, he goes in home with Travis Hunter and does what he needs to do. My point is, for him specifically, in my humble opinion, to get over that hump, you got to do what the other dudes are doing. You can't just keep going through the portal every year. You're going to continue to be where you're at. Travis Hunter is not going to be there to make a game-saving interception for you to go 9-3. You don't have that. Sorry, you don't. If you don't run the football better, it's not going to be better. I mean, I'm not saying that Caden Salter is better or worse than Shedeur Sanders. I think it's a great addition. I think you got great wide receiver play. But, Joe, I saw a team come back in North Dakota State by running it right at you. The games that you lost, teams started running the ball right at you. My point is if you want to take – you said get to a playoff and contend for a national title. Well, the way that you win your conference is you got to get better up front. I'm with you on the brand building and all of that. It's also to me, if that were my team, where do we want to go versus what Texas Tech and all these other teams are doing? Yes, you're in a different conference, so it makes it a little bit different. You can't get away with that everywhere. You can't. So all I'm saying is, if I'm an AD and I wanted to hire him, hey, man, you got to go in home. These big high school battles, you got to win. To get where you want to go, you got to do those things. By the way, who won the Big 12? Humor me.
Arizona State.
Who's their quarterback?
Sam Leavitt. Transfer portal.
It's not as if that they can't get – he's a true freshman.
No, he was a redshirt freshman. He transferred from Michigan State.
They have done really good through the portal, but they've also had a foundation of doing what?
I mean, they haven't out-recruited Colorado in high school recruiting.
Well, recruiting in reference to what they've done and versus what they're going. The portal, a lot of those kids that Deion recruited are out the door anyway. Who was the running back that went to Kansas State? The Edwards kid, right?
Dylan Edwards, yeah. He was a high school kid that they brought in. But, Blake,
Joey,
I'm just to say this, though, to your concern that you're worried about whatever his next job is. This is why I stand by that I don't think he's ever going to leave Colorado, because his approach is only one that is successful at a program like Colorado, a program that has had success, that has competed for national titles in their history, but has historically been, let's call it what it is, a bad football program. Historically, before Deion Sanders got there, for the majority of its history was really, really bad, except for the Cordell Stewart, Eric Bieniemy days. It was a really bad football program. It is not a simple undertaking to consistently churn out bringing in top defensive line, offensive line, high school recruiting classes. All of those top guys end up at the teams that we talked about Justice Terry, right? The other night, they go to the teams that get offered the most bread. I take this step forward, the part that we're not even talking about here. Maybe Deion Sanders is realizing it's not worth the investment for him to show up at a kid's house and try to recruit him and try to get him to buy in, just for him to tell him, hey, I just took $1 million from Texas.
Oh, but he's not he's not competing with that. Him trying to compete with that would be a farce.
Or he's competing with the Texases of the Michigans of the world. The Michigans of the world.
No, let me tell you what it comes off as. You want ready-made products so that you don't want to have to develop.
I don't think that that's the case. I think it's understanding that he's not going to win these battles for these high four-star kids with SEC and Big Ten programs that have a lot more money to spend at the current moment. He needs to make the program as marketable as it can.
Home. You're making $6 million a year.
Most coaches can't not go in home. If I got a phone call from Deion Sanders as a high school recruit and he told me he wanted me, I would run to go play for him.
No, but as a parent, who's another school? If Coach McGuire or somebody else is after my kid and everything's the same and they're going in home and they're showing that they want everything to do with my son and they're not just keep doing it over Zoom because it is what it is. It's more comfortable for me. As a parent, I'm going to look at the person who's coming in home. I'm telling you, you think that these parents don't care about that shit? They do care about that. They do care about that shit. And again, if I'm Florida State, I'm like, hey, man, I would hire you, but are you going to do this? Joe, I'm telling you, it's a big deal, man.
I'm just not all the way there. I mean, I don't mind acknowledging.
Let me ask you this question. Let me ask you this question. Name a coach that's ever had success of getting over the hump of where they currently were without doing more.
But my argument would be doing more is the incorrect way of framing it. And this is my whole talking point with this. He's doing it differently because he's the only coach who can do it differently.
I disagree with that. If Nick Saban never wanted to go on the road and wanted to do Zoom meetings with kids, he could have done it.
He took over Alabama, though.
They didn't have a winning record.
Colorado is not going to win a national championship anytime in the next five years.
Saban's a horrible one to compare that. Who's someone that took over a prestige program?
No. We need to think of somebody who took over a mediocre program and turn it into a consistently winning one. It's hard to find an example of this.
No, I just can't think of one at the current moment. Someone's done it. Oh, I got one. Urban Meyer, before he went to Ohio State twice.
Utah is a good not a bad example.
Yeah, Utah. I mean, what are we? And then it's sustained. And you can't, Joe. You have to build a foundation. At some point, I am telling you, at some point, he's gonna miss on these portal kids. He's not gonna have a Travis Hunter to save his ass. And then you're gonna be pointing the finger. Well, what happened? You know what happened? You can't run the football because you're not recruiting inside of high school and developing along the offensive line. There are people out there. I love Jaheim Otis. Joe, the kid got benched, right? The kid got benched. So it was a work ethic and attitude issue. So if that does, I don't think it will translate, but there is a chance that it does. So there comes a part where you have to recruit through high school and develop. By the way, your high school classes, by the way, this goes for everybody besides Ohio State and Georgia. They're the only two teams right now that don't have this issue currently. Joe, half your class is getting cut via the portal. There are teams from the 2024 recruiting class that majority, if not all of their class is gone. The 2023 recruiting class, only 10 to 15% of kids are staying outside of the top elite programs.
Well, I mean, I'd add this even into the mix, and this is the angle that I forgot to bring up. What's the point of Deion Sanders recruiting a kid, a freshman, that's not going to get on the field, that's not ready to play?
Let me tell you why.
Just going to hop in the portal anyways. And he's brought this up before.
Well, let me tell you why. Because 3 years ago, instead of going and saying, I'm bringing my baggage with me and hitting the recruiting trail from a high school, these kids could have been developed now, and you could have sustained, meaning you could have been going into year 3, you could have developed an offensive line to where you could have been more sustained around you.
None of the kids on that roster at the time were very good. They weren't good enough to play.
That is fine. But he's not the only. Here's one thing that he's not going to be immune to. He's not immune to recruiting and developing. He's not immune to it.
That
so
I don't
you can
disagree
go in the
with.
portal and get all of these kids and do whatever you want to do. But at the same time, if you're 130th in the country in rushing next year, then that is on you. It's on nobody else but yourself.
That part, obviously, if there's no improvement to the run game, that we're going to keep talking about that. That's a problem that needs to be addressed. But I still stand by the talking points that I'm bringing up here, especially the last one I just brought up of if you're uncertain if a kid's going to actually commit and stay for a long period of time. He's already had this happen. He already had it would happen with Cormani McLean, who couldn't get on the field early and was getting frustrated and left. Had it happen with Dylan Edwards, who was actually playing and decided to leave because he wanted to be.
Joe, he's not immune to that. It happens everywhere.
I know, but why are we watching every other This is my argument: is that there are a few programs that can do what like Notre Dame did and LSU did, and I'm trying to Ohio State, where they for the most part retained a lot of their top high school recruits. A lot of times these kids just get in the portal the minute that they're not getting on the field now. So yeah, why would he commit so much energy and time?
Because you're getting paid $6 million a year.
But he can be better suited in marketing the program, which he's doing, and 2, better suited going after portal guys that are
here's the problem. The guy that came in a worse or about the same level of situation that you did just won the conference in Kenny Dillingham. So there's the point. There. Where do you want to go? Do you want to continue to stay at the level? We're taking way too long on this.
Yeah, we should jump to the next thing. I had a feeling that this was going to go long.
Well, it's just, I don't know. Anyway, all right. So we continue on these hires that were made in the offseason. Joe, today we did offensive coordinators yesterday, and I know that we're probably going to pick the top 2 the same as well here. But the DC hires that were made this offseason, none bigger than Jim Knowles and Tom Allen. Let's start off with Jim Knowles. Joe, I think Penn State made the move of the offseason when it comes to what they did getting Jim Knowles away from Ohio State. The guy going back home. This is going to be monitored very closely, but your thoughts wrapping this up on what it means and the impact of Jim Knowles going to Penn State.
Yeah, we can't talk about, like we did yesterday, who deserves to be labeled as the most impactful defensive coordinator hires. We can't talk about anybody without bringing up Jim Knowles. I mean, Jim Knowles, the way that Ohio State's success was driven by how dominant they were defensively, not only this past year, but over the past couple of years, it rides off of Jim Knowles' shoulders. Jim Knowles has been so unbelievable at not only developing talent, but also capitalizing on it, knowing how to utilize and set up his guys to succeed. JT Tuimolau and Jack Sawyer, Ohio State fans probably aren't going to agree with this. They're not going to go on to be super highly drafted edge prospects. They're just not. The fact that he was able to get the amount of production that he had out of those guys, along with Tyleik Williams and everybody on that defensive line, I think helps us fully paint this picture of what Jim Knowles is as a defensive coordinator. For Penn State to end up in this situation where they lose their guy that was fantastic this year and just immediately replacing him with the best defensive coordinator, I don't even think that's ever really even happened in the history of the sport. Like, when can we think of it that a team lost one of the best defensive coordinators to another football program and upgraded? It doesn't happen.
The only one that I can think about, but it didn't happen, though, because Saban didn't let it happen. When Ed Orgeron got hired, here's a little story time for you. Lane Kiffin accepted the job to be the OC at LSU. Signed, sealed, delivered.
I don't remember any of this.
Oh, Joe, listen to your boy. It happened. Nick Saban called Jimmy Sexton and said, get him a head coaching job anywhere in America. Do it now. That would have been the only time that I really remember something like that happening. But listen, this does not happen often. I guess Chip Kelly, right? I mean, like, that is, but it's on the other side of the ball. Defensively, you're right. I don't remember this happening. My question becomes why? Everybody wants to point at money. Maybe money does have a factor, but they were going to match it. Like, all the reports came out that Ohio State wanted to match this. Why did he leave? Oh, I wanted to go home. I'm not buying it. Okay. I think that he saw something and he wanted to be a part of something of a rebuild. He did the same thing going to Ohio State and helped rebuild the defense that quite honestly was struggling. Joe, quite frankly, Penn State defensively has not been their issue. It's not their issue. It won't continue to be their issue. Are there some things they got to get better at defensively? Sure, I'm with you. Okay, whatever. They recruit well. They develop well. And I think they'll continue to do that. The question is never going to be for me if Jim Knowles is going to be able to rebuild and revamp and help Penn State defensively. Joe, what are we talking about? 2 years ago, Manny Diaz led Penn State to the #1 total defense in the country. Like, what are we talking about here? I don't think that the success behind this is going to be solely on Jim Knowles. They got a lot that they have to replace, Abdul Carter being the biggest one. They continue to reload there, if I'm just being honest, defensively. I love the safety play that he's getting back. A lot of the guys that we saw in the playoff, he'll have back. He'll have a lot of experience that he can work with. So it's a lot to build on. I will say this. I know we want to talk about the DC side of things, but there's not a better coordinator duo, in my opinion, in the country. Jim Knowles and Andy Kotelnicki is easily the best. The question will be, how quickly can they sustain without having to do like Abdul Carter, right? What is Tyler Warren leaving the process for Penn State all around? How does that look? They made a big investment. The big thing for Penn State is what, Joe? Can they get over the hump? That is the ultimate question for them. Not just James Franklin, for them as a collective unit. Making a move like this tries to solidify that you're doing everything that you can to do that. It's a big move. I think Jim Knowles is, look, give him a year. If it doesn't look great, give him. You got to give him the same leeway that Ohio State did and how he rebuilt it. By the way, guys would have not come. I heard this from Ohio State fans as an example. Everybody came back to finish what they started. No. Guys would not have come back if, number one, they didn't get paid, which Penn State will pay them. But number two, if they didn't love their DC.
Right. That's a very good point. Right. You don't come back unless you're excited about what you can do the upcoming year.
Exactly. And he built that. He was the one that restructured that. Can he replicate that at Penn State will be a big deal.
Yeah, part of me, and we talked about this, part of me kind of wonders, is this like an immediate hit the ground running type of a situation? Because they are losing a couple of their best players. They're losing Abdul Carter. Kevin Winston Jr. didn't play this year, but he left for the NFL. They still return Zane Durant and a lot of their other guys. Kobe King's also on the way out, who is one of their better linebackers. There are replacements that need to be had, and I think that they've recruited well enough that we're going to see a high degree of success. Does he have a guy that's as talented as Caleb Downs on that defense? No, he currently doesn't. But can he find someone?
But here's the thing, though. You might not have that elite safety like that. Joe, let's just be honest with you. The safety play, I mean, listen, Ashton Genty's probably the best back in this draft. Safeties came down and were tackling him in the open field.
Well, that's not on Genty.
No, I'm bragging about the.
Oh, I know. Okay, I know what you mean. Yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, like, listen, it's not that he doesn't have guys that didn't return. It's not that he doesn't have pieces to build off of. He does have some pieces. Now, the #1 overall pick, that's a completely different story in Abdul Carter.
Right?
I mean, again, how do you replace that? He still has pieces to work with. So we'll see. Speaking of the guy, and speaking of defense, the guy that Jim Knowles is replacing was going to be the guy that I wanted to talk about. That being Tom Allen, taking the defensive coordinator job over at Clemson. Was 1 year at Penn State, then goes to Clemson and takes it over there. Joe, your thoughts, Tom Allen being the new DC at Clemson?
It's kind of funny to see all the shuffling chairs, and I guess the party that got screwed the most in all this is Ohio State. But to see the shuffling chairs that actually help the outcomes for all these teams. Jim Knowles for Penn State is amazing. And Tom Allen stepping in here as Clemson's new defensive coordinator is probably the most impactful move of this offseason that is not getting enough pop. It's just not getting enough recognition for what this can change. Their defense, the identity that they had on that side of the football, Blake, was what made Clemson so good during their national championship runs. The biggest problem that we have consistently seen for Dabo is swinging and missing on coordinator hires. Since that national championship chunk of time when they were like in the thick of it and they were always a top 4 team, we criticized the hell out of him until he brought in Garrett Riley.
Yes.
And now we criticize the hell out of him until he brings in somebody as premier as Tom Allen. Going to outsiders to boost the quality of play on both sides of the football is what gets Dabo back into winning the ACC consistently, back in the national championship conversation consistently. And he's going into the freaking portal, which is the craziest part about all of this. This Clemson team, this defense, it's not going to be perfect, but I really believe that their run defense is going to be better because it's going to have better direction. I'm a big fan of Will Helt, and I think that Will Helt is going to have an impact as well. We've talked really highly of Sammy Brown, who is a tremendous linebacker who's going to be key for the run defense improving. A lot of things need to go right, and it starts when you have a known commodity leading the direction. That's how you get things to start going right instead of a wild card like promoting somebody on the roster or hiring somebody away from a smaller program.
All right. This is not indicative of Tom Allen, but stay with me.
Okay.
I don't think any hire in the country stops from teams whipping your ass up front. I don't. I mean, Joe, I keep going back to when it comes to Clemson, I keep coming back to the Texas game where backups, Joe, backups were coming in. Will Held doesn't stop that. Peter Woods and those guys got pushed around for 300 yards before kneel downs. That is a fact. That's not an opinion. It is a fact. Joe, I look at a team in Georgia as an example who could not run the football to save their life this year. Second half, they start snapping necks and cashing checks. Trevor Etienne did not play in that game, by the way. A true freshman running back in his first game ever had to step up. I love the addition of Tom Allen. I don't want to go away from that. Year one is a different beast of what they need to do. Him taking over at Penn State, doing what he did, is a different animal than taking over what he's going to be taking over at Clemson. If they are able, I'm not saying they can't do this, if they get better defensively, it's going to come with the front four. They cannot allow teams. Let's look at the teams that beat them this year. They were 10-4. They lost to Texas. They lost to Georgia. They lost to South Carolina. They lost to Louisville. What do all four of those offenses have in common when they're clicking? They want to play physical and run the football. That 1,000% is their DNA. I just don't know if schematically he can work around that. Now, if they have a big offseason going into game one versus LSU and they win that thing, okay, great. I'm more of a wait-and-see mode. They're going to have to go through a little mini rebuild here, in my opinion. Now, Sammy Brown in that front seven, we've talked about Sammy Brown ad nauseum. I think you can move him around and do a lot of creative things. I just don't know if it stops the ultimate trajectory of what you got to do to rebuild. I love the hire, and I don't want to act like I don't love the hire. I also want to point out that the 4 games that you lost last year, you got physically dominated, and I just don't know if he can change that, if that makes sense.
The bodies are definitely important for having a good run defense. Like, I'm not going to sit here and question it. I mean, if I tried to question that, I wouldn't know ball.
It's a multi. Like giving up 150. To your point,
right? It's a multi-year process, but at the same time, I can at least feel better about the group performing better. I can feel better about the group like taking a step forward. The one thing that does need to just be briefly brought up is Tom Allen took over a really well-recruited group and well-coached group by Manny Diaz. He took over a group that Manny Diaz built.
Oh, true.
We got to see, like, in all seriousness, like, I'm not trying to crap on Clemson because I've been really bullish on Clemson. Unexpectedly, Clemson fans think I'm a hater. This year, the 2 teams I've shit on the most, Texas and Clemson, I'm suddenly a big supporter of both those programs this offseason, which is hilarious.
I can't wait for the day you do it for USC.
That will never happen. Never in a million years. Hate USC. What I'm getting at here is that we do need to, like, for sure see, hey, Can he coach well, stepping into a new situation that wasn't already well built? Because you're right, this is not a well-structured defense. It's got holes. It's messy. It's losing some quality guys. It's a process.
And listen, call me a homer all you want, but here's a non-homer take. You go out there game one and you let a team that's replacing an entire offensive line and could not run the football last year at LSU, you let them come into your house and run the football on you, we'll have our answer early. You stop the run and you're like, okay, well, that's better than what we've ever seen. Well, I mean, they weren't that good. You're going to get the crack at it game one. I don't know. I mean, you are. I just listen. It's Joe. If they were only giving up 150, maybe even 200, I'd be like, all right, maybe there's motivation factors here. Joe, they're giving up at this point. Pride was on the line, right? Like there were a game was on the line to advance in the playoffs, and you couldn't stop 34 power. By the way, you had a center and a right guard that were backups and a right tackle that came into the game, and they whipped your ever-living ass. The question becomes, what does Tom Allen do knowing this going in? And you're right. Manny recruited his ass off. I mean, look, Manny Diaz is a lot of things. He's gotten a bad rap. Having bad defenses and recruiting and building those defenses is not going to be one of them.
No.
I do agree with you. I think you hit the nail on the head here. There's a difference, though. We should expect them to be a little bit better in stopping the run. I'm with you there. Schematically, everything, I'm with you there. But there comes a point in time. I thought their DB room, for what it's worth, I don't think they played bad. Joe, I really didn't think they played bad versus Texas. It was just when you could not stop the run and Texas kept going play action on your ass. Yeah. Same with Georgia. That's when you started getting obliterated. Again, give Tom Allen time. It will work. But what is your expectation going into year one will be the question.
I have one more guy that I want to bring up.
If you go Matt Patricia, I'm going to vomit.
No. Okay. Corey Heatherman coming in at Miami. I'm rehashing this debate that we had.
All right. Okay.
This has to be.
I knew you were going to go here. I'm so glad you went here. I knew it.
Blake, this has to be a part of the conversation of most impactful defensive coordinator hires because Miami was so freaking close to being a playoff team. They had everything that they needed. And I know that they're replacing Cam Ward and they're replacing a couple other dudes on offense. I'm not worried about offense. Shannon Dawson's a great OC. Their defense was a shit show for a lot of the stuff that you talked about. Poor tackling. There was a lack of overall fundamentals. It's the same thing that we saw with Alex Grinch and then eventually D'Anton Lynn taking over at USC. Heatherman was quietly one of the best defensive coordinators in the country. I've pointed this out. I faced him when he was
from Minnesota,
coming from Minnesota, and I faced him when he was at James Madison and when he was at Maine. Both times, incredible defenses. And I didn't even totally register this until we did a little bit of we had this original conversation. But this past year, they were 10th in opponents' points per game. They were 20th in yards per rush. They were 21st in rush yards per game. And then in pass yards per game, pass yards per attempt, they were 19th. And pass yards per game, they were 11th. They only allowed 181 pass yards per game. Just like we talk about with a lot of these things, this is not an immediate fix. But if I'm trying to go with somebody who is going to reset the mentality, the approach, the focus, I'm going with a young up-and-coming guy like Heatherman, who you saw last year with a third of the level of prospect talent that Minnesota had to pull from to use, that he had a bunch of dudes who were hitting hard and that were fundamentally sound as shit against the run and against the pass. That's how you get better. You bring in a guy like this that transformed the defense as quickly as he did at a lower program.
I'm not going to let you get away that you love a guy because you played against him and he beat you.
But I didn't even notice that. I didn't even. Well, I've glazed the shit out of Kurt Cignetti, and I went up against Kurt Cignetti for 2 years when I was in college too.
Okay, fair.
I have the context.
All right. The talent level is risen from what he had at Minnesota to what he has now at Miami. Again, I go back to the same thing that I was talking about just previously with Tom Allen. Joe, there's not a lot. I'm not trying to argue here, but here's the fundamental truth. If you're getting lost in man-to-man coverage, just stay with me.
Okay.
Just stay with me. I question if it's a personnel issue or a coaching issue. So, what I would say is, I don't think that Lance Guidry, first year then going into second, just completely sucked. I do not believe that how good they were in his first year was completely indicative of what they did. Now, I will say this. I think that sometimes you are correct. A change of face can help. Okay, but listen, I have seen teams, a lot of teams, make changes and things don't get fixed until personnel gets fixed. Now, they brought in some different pieces from the portal at safety and things like that from Wisconsin, whatever. That will help. I'm with you there. There just comes a point in time where, Joe, why do I have a gut feeling that Mario and a Mario Cristobal-led team will continuously let me down? See, everybody wants to point at Lance Guidry and the defense last year, where I don't disagree with what they did defensively. I was the one saying before they lost the second game that if they keep allowing these explosive plays, somebody's going to clip them. They got clipped twice. My whole point in this, that's not Manny Diaz. That is, we were just talking about him. That is a Mario Cristobal problem too. Like, how many times has he been in these big profile situations and his teams fall up short? Now, I agree with you. It can help with a change of face. Here's what I'm going to say about Miami. You're going to have to prove to me that you won't get lost and not allow explosive plays. Joe, there were times where their front seven got pushed around. All those high talented guys got pushed around by teams that finished 6-6. So, listen, man, I don't hate the hire, but I think that there's more of a rebuild defensively at Miami than people are wanting to give credit for. And I think that it comes from a mentality standpoint more than anything. You're right on one thing. If he can change the mentality, then things could be different. But there also comes a part where when I look at Oregon and I look at Miami and them having the same issues, I'm like, there's only one common denominator here.
Look, I think, though, we need to acknowledge that the roster development and building, like we've talked about with all these guys, it does fall some of it on Guidry. That those guys were not being coached, because Mario Cristobal is not in the day-to-day discussions with the defense on how they need to handle certain situations and how focused they are.
Clearly he's not with the offense when he's fumbling the football instead of kneeling it.
Okay, that was 2 years ago. But
Joe,
I'm not, but like, I'm just saying that moving on from Guidry, and we talk about this all the time, that like the credit needs to be go to coaches that know when to cut ties and to move on and to move in a different direction. And I think that the credit needs to be given to Mario, and to go with a hire like this instead of promoting from within or just trying to bring somebody from the NFL or somebody along those lines. He sees somebody who's an up-and-comer who has been a great coach at multiple destinations and commits to him and gives him the opportunity to shine in this situation. I think we need to see the success. We need to see before we can really commit to the belief that it has something to do with the roster. And I brought this up before. They were aggressive in the portal of bringing in new corners. They were very aggressive to the point where it caused a controversy that we don't need to bring up with Xavier Lucas. He was deliberate, and this team was deliberate in finding new bodies. So I think that there is enough to go off of to believe that they're going to be improved. Not saying that they're going to be top 10 in every single defensive category, but if a guy like Steve Belichick can step in as quickly as he did, and for them to be as good as they were defensively, who says they can't lead the country in a certain defensive stat? Who says they can't do that? And in the ACC, that's enough to help you win the conference. It's not like they're battling it out with elite offensive teams every single week.
Mario Cristobal had Justin Herbert and Cam Ward and didn't make a playoff with either one of them.
I can't counter that criticism.
No, you can't. Because at some point, there comes a point of having an aura of how you lead teams. You're going to have to prove to me that you can get over the hump, Joe. I'm sorry. I don't hate the hire at all. I mean, he did really well at Minnesota. Sure, okay. But I also have not seen you as a collective administrative whole get over the hump. I don't think it's bad criticism to say I need to see you get better.
It's not bad criticism, and I understand why you're bringing it up, because we quite literally have brought this up with so many other coaches. Is like, hey, we need to actually see the results before we immediately.
There's a reason coaches got fired and hired.
Right? Exactly. If I'm trying to solve this problem, though, I'm looking across the board and I'm looking for options that are specifically going to resolve the problems that we had. I spoke really highly of the D'Anton Lynn hire because it accomplished exactly what USC needed to accomplish, which is they needed to bring in. Can I just finish? They needed to bring in a super sound, fundamental defensive coach that is a front seven first guy that was going to have an attention to detail and a pride in tackling and swarming to the football. And we saw that in the first game. Now it broke down a little bit over time, but we saw that right away in the first game. I think that we are in this same position with a team like Miami, that they're going to have improvements. And they weren't as much of a shit show as USC was when D'Anton Lynn took over. I think that in this conference that they're playing in, that doesn't have a lot of hard-nosed defenses like this, that they're going to separate themselves. It's not like the Big Ten.
Okay. We'll see.
Should we punt on Scott Frost, by the way?
I think we should punt on Scott Frost because I got to get moving here. All right. Scott Frost always getting put on the back burner. Always.
Oh, he's got to do something first.
How many people are going to go to Nebraska and fail before it's maybe a Nebraska problem?
I mean, that's a real conversation that needs to be had. That's not on it. Although when you kind of hear, and it's alleged, it's not like he was doing anything like really problematic, but like when you hear how much he was kind of coasting, and just was like acting like the big man on campus when he showed up there, it kind of makes sense why they sucked. So I don't know if I'd really put that on him.
Everybody sucked besides Bo Pelini.
Yeah, but they were a different level of bad.
I know they moved on from a guy who was going 10-9-3 every year.
To his defense, I think that they had like a ridiculous amount of like one-score games that they lost. So like
17. They were 0-17 in one-score games,
which is still telling. But I'm excited to talk about Scott Frost when we get to him on Wednesday.
Me too. They're going to win a national title.
Sure.
He won. He's already won a national title at UCF. You hadn't heard?
National title.
By the way, UCF has had some really interesting coaches. Josh Heupel, Scott Frost, Gus Malzahn. Whoever the AD is there, I don't.
They got more money than people realize.
They do. Orlando, baby. They got Disney. So
I
we'll see y'all soon. You have a good one. Peace.